Welcome to Strictly Facts, a guide to Caribbean history and culture, hosted by me, Alexandria Miller. Strictly Facts teaches the history, politics, and activism of the Caribbean and connects these themes to contemporary music and popular culture. Hello, everyone. I'm Alexandria Miller, your host of Strictly Facts, a guide to Caribbean history and culture. Today's episode is one I've really wanted to have on the podcast for a while. You know, one of my motivations really and truly for starting this podcast is to bridge our region together through our conversations and discussions of our history. And as successful as I think we've been in that mission, as well as several other parts of our culture, just in ensuring our connectedness, there are, and of course, been instances and political tensions and, political relations where that hasn't always been the case of this one Caribbean we've sometimes talked about in the podcast. One such case, in a sense, is the long-standing discord between Haiti and the Dominican Republic, which, if you're unfamiliar, share the island of Hispaniola. These two now countries have been distinct entities since the 1600s when European colonization forced their division. And so joining us today to get into some of this history, as well as, joining the Strictly Facts family and talking about how this history particularly pertains to some of the statelessness in the Dominican Republic, especially for Haitians and Dominicans of Haitian descent. We have Rice University Assistant Professor Dr. Amarilys Estrella and one of the key activists in Dominican Republic doing this work, María Belique, who is of Reconoci. So thank you both so much for joining the Strictly Facts podcast family today. It's a pleasure having you. Please let our listeners know a little bit about yourself, where in the Caribbean is near and dear to you, and what inspired your work on the Dominican Republic and Haiti.
Well, thank you very much for this invitation. For me, it's a pleasure to be here and speak with you and with all the people who are listening to us. I am an activist. I live in the Dominican Republic and I am a Haitian descent. I born in the Dominican Republic, but my parents are Haitian immigrant who went to Dominican Republic to work in the sugarcane plantation a long time ago. All my brothers and sisters born in the Dominican Republic like me. And I become activist because this issue, what happened in 2013, who is affecting a lot of people in the Dominican Republic. I fighting for me, for my brothers and sisters, and for all my community. Like I believe what I fighting for. That's what I could say for now, because I know by the conversation we could continue talking more about. But yeah.
Thank you as well for the invitation. As you mentioned, I am a professor at Rice University, and a lot of my research has been on statelessness in the Dominican Republic. And the way that I came to this work was through being born and raised in New York City, being the child of Dominican immigrants who themselves have had deep ties and really taught us to have those deep ties with the Dominican Republic. And so even though I wasn't born there, always feeling this connection to the place, to the island as a whole, and trying to really understand, as I was traveling back to the DR and coming to New York, to understand the relationship between Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and in particular, why there was anti-Haitianism, and growing up in a Dominican household, Dominican community in New York City, trying to understand why there was such anti-Haitianism and anti-Blackness in the country. And a lot of this work became a commitment to being connected to others who were organizing around these issues in New York City and in the Dominican Republic through my work prior to being a professor, being a program officer for the Caribbean, Haiti, and the Dominican Republic, and getting to know a lot of the grassroots organizers in the country who were fighting, as Anna said, for their right to be recognized as Dominican citizens.
Lots of things to cover in this episode. We might have to have several parts But I think the first thing before, as Anna mentioned, we will obviously get to 2013, but I think the crux of, cementing the longer history of this, we can't, negate establishing sort of the long history of their political disagreements over the last several hundred years. And so, there isn't a way to really encapsulate what happened in 2013 without understanding this larger history. So, how would you all, in sort of a brief summary, contextualize the historical framing of this longstanding statelessness between Dominican Republic and Haiti, especially considering some of the things that you both mentioned, anti-Blackness and anti-Haitian sentiment?
One of the things that even as Anna and I were thinking about how do we talk about this issue is that oftentimes it is presented in a sense as these two countries that can't get along, right? So a lot of the research that has been done, the conversations that we've been having is how do we think about what's been happening on a political level by, let's say, the nation state or the state level, right? So how do we think about the kind of structural discrimination and racism that emerges from government policies, and at the same time recognize that there has been a long history as well of collaboration and engagement between Haitians and Dominicans historically in their daily engagements and practices with one another. So we always want to start there because it's not that you don't experience anti-Haitianism or understand anti-Haitianism from even those same quotidian places, but that there are ways in which at the state level, we've seen policies and practices that have led to statelessness that are always in conversation with a kind of contestation that's happening at the community level on the ground as well, right? And so even the idea of what is Haiti and what is the Dominican Republic and how this border is imagined has been in contestation for a really long time as well. The other thing I'll say is that neither Anna or I are historians. And so, I always like to shout out some of the historians like Anthony Stevens Acevedo, Lisa Acosta Cornien, folks like Ann Eller, Lauren Derby, Amelia Hinson, who have done much more of this historical analysis, and also Dominicanists such as Ginetta Candelario and Lorgia Garcia Peña, who have also talked about this issue, right? So I'm really kind of engaging the work that they've been writing about to think about these questions of what's been happening when we think about the island as a whole. And so one of the things that we always like to point to is to say, that the Dominican Republic, or the eastern side of the island, which at some point was known as Haiti completely, right? The indigenous name of the island was Haiti. That this is actually the eastern side of the island is the birthplace of slavery, in the sense that the first port of entry of enslaved Africans is in the Dominican Republic, right? That there's an actual space that you can go to, even if the colonial history that you're taught doesn't tell you that. That points to this being the first place where enslaved Africans arrive in the Western Hemisphere. And it's also the first place of enslaved people's uprisings, right? So thinking about the fact that we're talking about a population which is majority either identifying as Black or mulatto, who's actually in some ways, this history is being erased, right? So there are ways in which the government has systematically erased this history. And that the Dominican Republic, the birthplace of it as a nation, is happening at the same time that we already have the first Black Republic right next door. And so when we think about the kind of menace, right, the idea that this first Black Republic presented a problem for the world, right, for US empires, for other empires, then means that the Dominican Republic has to really figure out how to not be seen as Haiti, right? How as a nation can we construct ourselves in a way that shows that we are not Haiti, right? And so when we start thinking about how the Dominican Republic as a nation in and of itself emerges, then we can see that it is at all times trying to really be in distinction from what Haiti represents. And that means then that this is how you get the kinds of erasures that happen around its own Black history. And so it is really the work of more contemporary activists, historians, to really, once again, create a space to make sure that those narratives around what is Dominican Black history to be at the forefront. And I would say also that one of the things that I think is important then is to think the Dominican Republic is not anti-Black because it was always anti-Black, but that the way the US empires are thinking about these parts of Latin America and the region which are already also shaping these comparisons around what is the DR and what is Haiti, right? And that so the DR is not necessarily emerging as a nation state in its own vacuum, but within the kind of geopolitical terms of the time. And so this is really shaping how Dominicans are seeing themselves, but also the kinds of erasures, as I said, that emerge in terms of what does it mean to be Black in the Dominican Republic. And it is really within this context that then we see anti-Haitianism gains a place in Dominican history, right? But again, I want to say that this is not without contestation, right? We have historians and people like Milagros Ricord and Anne Eller who are also pointing to all kinds of collaboration that is happening across the island early on.
I think an important piece, even contextualizing that within the greater history, right? There are so many things that, whether it's social media or, how things are portrayed now, if we don't cement it in this larger history, it even falls short of us really understanding the true backbone. So thank you so much for that introduction. I think even shifting more so to the 20th century, and obviously into today, I think we'd be remiss to not also, in that same breath as you're talking about, Dr. Estrella, also talk about the Trujillo dictatorship and contextualizing Trujillo's rule in Dominican Republic also played a very large role in this anti-Haitian sentiment as well. And so in that, just asking to, give a brief synopsis of how his dictatorship, the extent of his rule for over 30 years really helped to characterize how some of these policies came into play and affected both Dominican and Haitian relations, as well as some of the things that we'll get to in our later conversation today.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the Dominican Republic was under the brutal dictatorship of Rafael Leonidas Trujillo beginning in 1930 all the way to his assassination in 1961. And it's really during the dictatorship, based on what historian Edward Paulino, who I forgot to mention earlier, but also want to give a shout out to. Edward Paulino is a historian who has done extensive research on the massacre in particular, which is what a lot of people might be familiar with. And this is, as you noted, the massacre of, so there are different numbers, right? So I want to just say, some people say it was 13,000, some say it was up to 20,000 Haitian migrants, but I also want to note that this is anyone who was perceived as Haitian, right? So we're talking about Black people in particular, or who were Dominicans of Haitian descent, or who were Dominicans who were not of Haitian descent, right? So that when we think about this anti-Haitianism sentiment, we have to think about anti-Haitianism right along with anti-Blackness once again. And so there has been no government recognition of this massacre. And it's really through the work of community organizations such as Border of Lights that there's actually any kind of work that's being done at the border to commemorate on a yearly basis the massacre. And it's the cementing of anti-Haitianism into policy at the government level, right? And it's also when you start to see the definition of a border, right? So things like, what is the Dominican border in and of itself become more demarcated. This is also a time when you have the U.S. occupation of both Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Haitian temporary guest workers are coming into the Dominican Republic to work sugarcane plantations for the production of sugar. And so while you have an anti-Haitian, anti-Black dictator who is condoning the massacre of Black people being perceived as Haitian, he's also continuously bringing in Haitian migrants through these guest worker programs that were once established by the U.S. in order to continue the production of sugar, but also then really creating these spaces of containment where anyone who's perceived Haitian, who's not in the sugarcane plantations, is actually being profiled and sent to sugarcane plantations to do that kind of labor, right? So it's forced labor. And you have Amelia Hinson, who's really looking at this history and how, people were being profiled, passports were being taken away. And this becomes a way of, once again, imagining that Haitian migrants and anyone who's being perceived as Haitians belong only within these spaces of containment for the production of sugar, for ways to benefit the Dominican nation state. And so this really then continues, because what happens is with the assassination of Rafael Leonidas Trujillo is that you have one of his puppet presidents continues to be in government after the assassination. He's called Joaquin Balaguer, and the Balaguer regime then continues to perpetuate these anti-Haitian practices and these violations. And it's really during the period of Balaguer that you start seeing concerns, or the idea of concerns around what to do with the population of Haitian migrants and the children that are being born in the country. And so it's really within the 20th century that, you know, we have the massacre, right? We have these very violent moments in Dominican history that then become reproduced in these other kinds of violences, which are now, as many Dominicans of Haitian descent say, producing a civil death in addition to this violent physical death that was happening in the earlier 20th century.
That really, to my mind, brings us to very much so my next question, which was focusing on the current problems in the Dominican Republic leading to this statelessness, right? So, of course, as you're mentioning, we have this forced labor that is occurring on plantations during the 20th century primarily. Then, you know, it's not that it stopped, right? Of course. And so, in a sense, how has anti-Blackness played a role, a central role really, in these continued problems, especially, you know, socially, politically, economically, et cetera?
So I can start here, and I think Anna can chime in, because what we've seen and continue to see is the cementing of, they weren't legal practices, is what I'm trying to say, right? You have these practices of like discrimination, violation of rights, which are imagined as happening at the individual level, right? Because even the massacre, which I didn't say this, was what the regime wanted people to imagine, was that this massacre happened because peasants, right, or like rural people in rural communities were the ones who actually perpetrated these acts, right? So they were trying to say that this was basically communal like violence, that it was actually other people from Dominican communities that were perpetrating the kind of violence experienced by Haitian migrants during the massacre. And so a lot of these practices were seen as extrajudicial. But when you start seeing these questions emerge within the government of Balaguer at questioning, what are we going to do with the children of Haitian migrants, right? There's a question here about legally, what can we do when our current constitution says that anyone born in this country, born on Dominican soil, has access to Dominican identity? And the question becomes, can the children of Haitian migrant be recognized as Dominican citizens? And so we start seeing more and more practices, which are at first at administrative levels, to deny documentation to the children of Haitian migrants. So what is happening is that someone needs to go get an identity document, or needs to have access to a birth certificate or a national ID card. They are being questioned as to whether they were born in the country, and are these documents that you're asking actually yours, right? But also questioning whether or not they should have been recognized because of their birth by soil, right? So this question of birthright citizenship becomes a question for the Dominican state. And so you start seeing questions around, how do we challenge this birthright citizenship and change the constitution, change our laws, so that we can actually find ways to prevent Dominicans of Haitian descent from having Dominican citizenship. And so we start seeing a series of policies emerge, administrative policies, constitutional changes, and then a constitutional ruling that basically they all add up to saying you should not have been recognized as a Dominican citizen, or this was an administrative error on our part, and therefore you should not be a Dominican citizen. And so that's really where a lot of the movement's work comes in, right? As they're young Black Dominicans of Haitian descent who are finding themselves in moments of denial of their legal identity.
Yeah, and I just want to add, like, for this problem, for example, with statelessness in the Dominican Republic, we start to see how in different buildings, in different offices, start to apply some kind of discrimination with people, Haitian descent, who went there to pick some document, to renew some document. But at the beginning, all this discrimination or negation wasn't right in some official communication. In some parts, when you went in somewhere, they give you, or in another part of the country, they didn't give you. After 2007, they start to share like official communication between the office in all over the country, and is when we start to see, okay, this is a state policy. This is a structural discrimination, because that don't come just from one people in one community, but that's come from the government, that's come from somebody with power, and now it's not just negating the right to one people, is now is negate officially the right for a lot of people. And that's, as Amarilys explained, that's what happened when they changed the constitution in 2010. After that, they start to, like, everybody should do the same. Everybody have the same consequence if you are Haitian descent, if you are born in the country. And that was the one of the reasons in 2013 the Tribunal Constitution make this new ruling, denied retroactively the right for all people who born in the Dominican Republic from Haitian immigrants. In the recent time, we could see how this policy apply not just with administrative communication, but now they make it in the constitutional, and they make it in the high level, in the like a Supreme Court of our nation. And that's why we speak about structural discrimination, because it's not something just happen between two people, or it's not just something happen like historical all the time, like happen, or you have the Haitian in one side, you have a Dominican in another side. Now they use the structure of the power to make that happen. Because sometimes, for example, in some case, when you went to some office, you find some employer, they say, oh, I'm so sad, I would like to help you, but the law is the law. They make a new policy, we are employer, we need to follow the policy. That means in some case, they that has employer have some sympathy with you, but they have a rule to guide what they do. That's why we speak about how they use the system to deny rights and to make the law more difficult for people, Haitian descent.
I was going to just add, and as you were speaking, you were reminding me of the ways that the policies have been implemented, right? Like there are many levels and layers to this, right? So like as Anna was pointing out, for almost any administrative procedure in the Dominican Republic, you need to have what's called a legalized birth certificate, right? Or a legalized document. And I'm going to try to make this not too confusing. But for example, if you want to go register at the university, right? And you need to show proof of, a birth certificate. The birth certificate that I got when I was a child, right, that I have at home, would not be enough proof that can be used as evidence for that registration process. You need to go to the Central Electoral Board and access a birth certificate or a document that is being certified by the Central Electoral Board. And that document that's certified has a time frame which you can use it within. So if in 3 months you haven't finished your registration process for college, you have to go get a newly certified document from the Central Electoral Board. So what this means is that your citizenship and the way that you can prove citizenship, it's a constant process. There are so many different moments in which you need to go to the Central Electoral Board to get a document that at any moment, an administrative official can say, actually, I can't give you this document, right? These experiences of not having access to their documents can happen at any moment, right? It can happen when you turn 18 and you want to get your national ID card and they say, actually, no. It can be when you want to register for college. It can be when you want to get married, right? These are different moments in which you're going to have to, once again, be asked to prove your citizenship. And so these are ways in which you then start seeing the limitations that are experienced by Dominicans of Haitian descent in their everyday lives, right? So this actually has an impact in everything you do. One of the examples I always hear is even to buy a cell phone, right? You are going to be asked for a national ID card, a cédula. So what happens if you can't show a cédula to get a cell phone, right? So just kind of giving more concrete examples of what this actually means when you are not being recognized by the state you were born in. This is why so much of the conversation has turned towards the experience of statelessness, right? And from conversations I've had, the Dominican Republic has the largest population of stateless people or people at risk of being stateless in the Western Hemisphere.
I just want to add a little bit part of my
Mhm.
personal testimony to illustrate what Amarilys was saying. When I was born, my dad went to do all the process, produced me. When I was 18, I take my ID and I was with passport, with everything. But when I finished my high school, I tried to go to the college, and I was looking all my documents to complete the requirement. And when I went to take my birth certificate, they say no, they cannot give me my birth certificate because they are making a research and they need to investigate. And I asked, investigate what? And they told me, well, in the book of your birth register say your dad and your mom are Haitian. I say, yes, they are Haitian. What is the problem? I always come when I always need my birth certificate, you give me with some problem. Why now? You say, well, we need to investigate what was the legal status of your parent when you born. And that, at this time, all my problem start with my document, and I spent so many years trying to get back my birth certificate to go to the university. And that was very difficult. And that is why I started my activism with this particular issue too, because one of my brother was with the same problem. When he went to take a birth certificate to have the ID, they stop him. They say, we need to investigate. And 2 years, 3 years after, the investigation didn't finish. 5 years after, 7 years after that, and all this time, he want to do everything. He want to get better, a good job. He want to go to the college. He cannot do anything because we some documents. You cannot do your life as a citizen and get access in all what you want to do. That happened to me, that happened to my brother, that happened to a lot of people in my community. And after 2007, we start to find more and more people with this difficult. In 2010, this situation become to start more difficult, and that's when we create the movement Reconocido. People who was affected by this issue in different way, we start to congregate together and to fight together as people affecting, and I still affecting because since today we continue fighting because the solution they give us is not a real solution, is not a definitive. And my case, for example, I continue in the process in the Supreme Court. We didn't finish like 10 years ago. We start, and until now, the process never ends.
I want to take us back a moment because I think, Anna, you made a very critical point that there's a point in time where some of this discrimination seems like it's on an individual level, right? It's not necessarily sanctioned, or, maybe that people might say, oh, that was maybe just Trujillo's regime, right? And blanket it on a particular person. But as you're saying now, right, moving into the 21st century, especially, these are state problems, right? These are things that have been espoused by the government and have become structural issues that affect, I'm sure, millions across the entire island, as you're mentioning. We alluded to it a little bit earlier, but I think, ruling 168-13 is a critical moment for us to even be talking about. As you said, we're now 10 years later since it was initially passed in 2013. My question here is in two parts, right? As you've even mentioned, how do we even describe this line between Dominicans of Haitian descent, right? Is it one generation removed? Is it two? Is it three? Is it four? Is it five? And how does this continue to be a marker for this anti-Haitian sentiment as we're talking about? And also to your own work on the ground, and what are the local efforts to support Haitians and Dominicans of Haitian descent, especially? And feel free to talk about your work more in depth with Reconoci as well.
Let's see if I could explain myself. Yes, it's 10 years since the decision of the Dominican Constitutional Court. At the beginning, this situation generate a lot of sensitive between a lot of people, especially in America and in the Caribbean. I remember a community of the Caribbean, CARICOM, play a very important role in this issue, because what happened, the government in the Dominican Republic never want to recognize when they are committing some violence. They never recognize that. They always try to minimize the situation, or they try to say, oh, this is not true, they are lying. In 2013, when this decision happened, they try to do the same thing. They try to say, oh no, this is nothing, or we have sovereignty, we as a country could establish our rule, how is Dominican, how is not Dominican. But when a lot of international organizations start to see and to understand how big was this issue, they start to say, oh no, this is not just something like affecting just one people or two people, because at this time we was speaking about more than 200,000 people. And today, 10 years after, I could say like we still to have the same quantity of people affecting, or even more, because they try to avoid the problem, but at the same time, they create a law who's supposed to resolve the problem. But what happened with this law is they create a law for the international opinion. This law is not really to resolve the problem inside the country. It's just to show the people outside the country, oh, we do something, we fix the problem. 10 years after that, I am here and I could say this problem is not fixed. A lot of people think the government fix this problem, resolve this problem. No more people are affected by this ruling. No more people are statelessness. But that is not true, because we are there. We are working with people every day. And I could say today the situation is worse than before, because in 2010, we have a lot of attention. A lot of the media, international organizations pay attention about what happened in the Dominican Republic. In 2015, the process of the law 169 finished, so they announced they going to deport a lot of people. I remember New York Times, Miami Herald, a lot of international correspondents went to Dominican Republic to see what's going on with all these people who went to be deported, and nothing happened at this time. What happened after that? Now everything calmed down. The report, the journalists, the international organization, everybody calmed down, silence, and now they start to do all what they was planning to do in 2013. And what happened now? We don't have nobody covering what happened in the Dominican Republic. No journalism, no international organization like following what happened in the Dominican Republic. And that's just why I say today our situation is getting bad and bad more than before, because the government are deporting people, arresting and deporting people every single day. They say, okay, it's immigrant, is Haitian immigrant, but it's not just only Haitian immigrant, it's Haitian descent, people who born in the country, just because they are undocumented and they are Black. Unfortunately, in my country, if you are Black, if you look Haitian, you need to care about where you move and how you move, because the policy could arrest you before they ask you for the document. Then they don't just going to ask you for the document and after that arrest you. No, they arrest you. And sometimes they went to you to the place when they put all the immigrant people, in document people, like a jail. And after that, they start to make the process to see if you have or no document. What happened with us, like as a Haitian Dominican, affected by this policy, the majority of us don't have document. That means even though you are not illegal, you are not immigrant, but if you have no document and you look Haitian, you could be arrested by the immigrant policy and you could be deported. And what is the other problem? If you want to resolve your own problem, you should say, okay, I want to do the correct process. I want to go to the office to fix my problem. You don't have where to go. No buildings, no administration, you don't have where to go. Like if you are Haitian immigrant and you want to resolve your problem, you have your embassy, you have the consulate, where to go and do the process you need to go to do to be documented in the country. But like a Haitian descent, we don't have nowhere to go to fix our problem. And that's why I say our situation is worse than before, because nowadays no attention, no international organization are putting attention on what happened. No journalists are paying attention to report what happened in the Dominican Republic. And inside to the country, our government don't care about this issue. They don't plan to do anything to fix this problem. They just try to play with this situation and to deport people every day, no matter if you are a Haitian illegal or no. They just do that and they play with this issue like it has a political issue, has all our past governments do before. They play with the immigration policy to bring attention with the nationalism people, ultranational people, and to get more power. When they bring attention to this issue, it's not for fix or help the community or help. No, they just do it to get more power, to get more popularity. In the middle of all of this, we has a movement, Reconocido, we established in 2010, 2011. We start to make a lot of mobilization to show our country, the people, what happened with us as a Haitian descendant. Because when we start to speak about that, a lot of people think the media make us look like a Haitian people who are demanding documents, who are demanding nationality. But we do a very hard work to show the media it's not about Haitian. It's about people who born in this country when the law, when the constitution in the Dominican Republic say, if you're born in the Dominican, you have the right to be citizen. We organize the people to has a movement to help them to understand we have right and we have right to demand to our country recognize us as a Dominican people because we're born in the country. We work in collaboration with a lot of others NGO in our country who are fighting for the nationality or human rights in the Dominican Republic. We continue this process. We organize people all over the country. We create new space to not just to mobilize people in the street, but also educate, create process to make people have more conscience about themselves as a Black people, has Haitian descent, and as a Dominican with right because we born in the Dominican Republic. For example, we have two nice book we create. It's a oral history project. One of our book is Our Life Transformed. The name of our book in Spanish is Nos Cambió La Vida. With a group of people in New York, they make the translation in English. We do it on Spanish. And it's a very nice book where you could understand our life in the Dominican Republic and how everybody has an individual affecting or trying to fight against this issue. And our second project is the book We Are Who We Are. Is about the same issue too. Is oral history, testimony from people Haitian descent who are speaking about how the decision, the ruling 168 affect their life. And also we have different other projects. They make several documentary about our situation. I am in one of them called Hasta la Raíz, or we could share the link with you if you want to put it in the description. The last things, I think it's the last things we create as a movement is called Black Dolls, MUÑECAS NEGRAS. It's a workshop we make with ladies, with children and women in the Dominican Republic. In this project, we try to help the children and the women to see themselves as a Black, as a Haitian descent, and to see how powerful we are because we live in one society where they discriminate us for who we are, for how we look. And they never teach us like, yes, we are Black and we are intelligent and we are powerful and we are nice, like especially when you come from Haitian descent, they always try to make the difference between being Black Dominican and being Black Haitian descent. We could find a lot of difference or perception how our society make us think. And with this project, we try to do a work where we help our community, we help the children and the women in the community to have a better things about them, about who they are. And this is a very nice project. We create Black dolls. I just want to add, for example, at the beginning, when we start to do this process, some of the ladies who come, they come because they know me, they trust me, but they didn't was sure about what's going on with this because they cannot imagine a Black doll nice because the Black doll we used to have idea is for practice the voodoo or something like that. But after we start the process, they start create by their own self dolls. And they said that was nice because they said, I create something nice, look like me, and was so powerful. This process, and we continue working in this process in some community with girls and children. And at the same time, I write a little book about this issue. Amarilys have it. It's called La Muñeca de Diela, Diela Popé. It's a Haitian and Dominican language. It's bilingual. This book is a story about one of the children who was always looking us by the window, making the black doll. She never come inside to see. She was watching all the movement by the window. And yes, I don't want to say all the story about the book because it's very short, but it's very nice. The story is for children, and is another strategy that we use to work with the children in the community, especially with the children who cannot to play with the soul, with something dangerous, and we make readings with them. I think that is one of our last project we are creating in the community. We continue fighting. We continue doing advocacy in the media with the government, but at the same time, as a movement, we working inside too, like try to change the way as we see us, the way as they talk about us, and to have a better conscience about us, to empower us to continue fighting. Because I believe if you don't believe in your ancestor and how they fighting for you and for you be free today, you cannot to have the power to continue what we need to continue today, because our situation in Dominican Republic is a very particular, and we need to continue fighting. And I realized too, it's not just Dominican Republic. The reality for Black people all over the world is a very big challenge, and we need to have the force, the ability, the capacity to fight against all of discrimination, violence the Black people are suffering around the world. But how we could do that if we don't empower ourselves, our community, and try to create a new way, a new role, how we could do it. Sometimes, as a Dominican Republic, they don't give us the space, but we need to create our own space. I want to leave it that. I don't know if Amarilys want to add something. Sometimes I feel like she knows us better than us, and maybe she could add something I miss in my conversation. Thank you very much.
I cannot. There's no way I can know you better than you know yourself. But I'll say that it's been a really beautiful experience of building with Ana and the Reconocido movement. And as an anthropologist, I spent a year with them during my dissertation research. And so that was really the moment that I would say that my friendship with Ana really blossomed, and it's been a really beautiful experience to be in community, to be in solidarity. And from our end, as someone who's doing this as part of a research, but also, and who's using it to be able to advocate, using that research for activist purposes and advocacy purposes, it's been important to really amplify their voices, and to do that through different spaces. So being part of the Dominican and Haitian diaspora in the US, and being part of a collective that's called We're All Dominican, that was able to help with that translation of Nos Cambió La Vida. And that exists now on an open access platform that anyone who couldn't read the Spanish version but can read the English version now has access to. And so for us as a collective, and me as an individual, so much of this has been about how to be in solidarity, how to amplify the voices of Dominicans of Haitian descent who are experiencing statelessness, who are experiencing denationalization policies and anti-Blackness in the Dominican Republic, and how we as as Dominicans, are also talking about anti-Blackness within our own communities and thinking about what does it look like to be in solidarity with one another.
Was one of my final questions. Speaking of solidarity, how best do you both, either of you or both of you, suggest, whether it's in the region or, across the diaspora, of course, how can we all better support the efforts of organizations like Reconoci, as, just as a Caribbean people, and ensuring that greater change is being made?
As I said at the beginning, the Caribbean community were a very good role play, or I don't know exactly how to say, at the beginning of this issue in 2013. But after 2016, like everything calmed down, more silence. I know geopolitically, a lot of things change. And here in US too, the community was more powerful and they was pay more attention about what happened. And what happened today is we feel as a people affecting and as an activist, I feel too much silence with this issue. A lot of people don't know what happened in the Dominican Republic. They don't know what happened before, and they just have no idea what happened now. And our government, our people who govern our country, they never want people to speak about this issue outside the country, even inside the country. In the last couple of years, like in the last 5 years, we have so very difficult to mobilize our people inside the country. Every time when we try to do some activity, outside public activity, they always try to boycott us. We have some group of people, ultra nationalist people, who try to boycott us, and the government know that, the police know that, but they don't give all the protection that we need. That means every day we have less opportunity, less possibility to go out and make demonstration against this issue in the Dominican Republic. But what I really want is like a space like that, like what we are doing now is very important for us, because we need to speak more about what happened in the Dominican Republic. If we don't speak more about what happened in the Dominican Republic nowadays in 2013, to have sympathize with our situation, and it help us with this issue. The another thing is not just speak between us, between the activism, but also do it with in the academic space, but also do it in the religion space, but also, and more important, with your government, with people who represent you in the Congress, in the government, like help us to create more conscience about this issue, because I learned something in my experience. We alone, we cannot change this situation. Inside the Dominican Republic alone, we don't have the opportunity to change this situation. But outside the country, like you alone as a foreign, you cannot to do anything to. You cannot to change the situation alone outside of our country. But together, we could do a lot of things. We need more support, people who help us to raise our voice every time when we do something, when we say something, find more people who help us. People writing about what happened in the Dominican Republic with Haitian descent, with Haitian people, with this ruling, creating a space like in the television, in the media, in the social media, and at the same time, if you have some thoughts you could want to share with us as a movement, people who are inside the country fighting, that is important too, because sometimes we analyze, we have more than 10 years fighting, sometimes we think, what else we could do? Because we try everything, you know? And maybe we have something we didn't try yet, or maybe we tried something 10 years ago, but now with this time, we need to update what we do before, or what worked in another country. Maybe we could make the replication, reply this in our situation. I don't know, but I think we have so many ways how we could do it. Or if you don't know how to do it, just help us with money. We need money to organize people, to mobilize people, to make education process. You know, a lot of our partners cannot go to the school. They cannot go to the university because they don't have document to do that. And even if they have money, well, they don't have money neither, but even if they have money, they cannot do it because they don't have the document. How create new space for we as a people? No, I don't know, but maybe help us to think, give us idea about what else we could do, because I feel this issue probably is going to be for a long time, and we need to create the ability, the capacity in our community to continue fighting without lost hope. How to build hope in this hard time when we don't know when the change coming.
Thank you so much for that. And I think, again, of course, I will link the information about Reconoci, so those who can support and who want to support and are looking for ways to support the efforts on the ground, for our show notes, for our listeners who are tuning in. Final question. We have named a lot of them, so I don't know if there are any others you want to mention, but I am always looking for ways, books, movies, films, songs even, that are integral to tying our history into popular culture. We've named several, but if either of you have any others that you want to reference, of course, feel free to share.
I think we touched on most of them. I would say also, just because for folks who might not read or speak Spanish, there are some resources that the collective We're All Dominican has also created on our website. So we can also share those. There's a syllabus. There are just, fact sheets, just information in general about what's happening in the country that can help anyone who wants to find ways to advocate or continue to share what's happening. It'll allow them, it'll help them think through the kind of language or what they want to say or share about the issue. So I would say that could be another resource in terms of somewhere where you can find more information. And then the Reconoci movement has music that they have created. We were trying to figure out if some of it is on YouTube, so we'll definitely let you know where to find it. But there are songs that were created by the movement to talk about their experience, which are out there in different genres, merengue being one of them. So I think that would be another way to also become aware and be part of this process by listening.
And of course, follow us in our social media, put in contact with us. We have our website where we usually update with new document communication, but also the social media like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram is Movimiento Reconocido or just Reconocido. You could follow us and keep in contact with us.
Wonderful. Yes, I will link all the social media accounts. I'll link, of course, to both pages for both of you, and all of the resources for our listeners to check out, both on Reconoci as well as just in general to learn more, as always. So thank you both so much for sharing your wisdom, your experiences, and your suggestions for us. This is how we continue to support this movement. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. If there are any questions or, ways that you all are looking to get in contact that I can help, of course, feel free to shoot me a message on the Strictly Facts pages. Until next time, everyone, little more. Thanks for tuning in to Strictly Facts. Visit strictlyfactspodcast.com for more information from each episode. Follow us at Strictly Facts Pod on Instagram and Facebook, and at Strictly Facts PD on Twitter.